Good afternoon, you're watching NTV and you're welcome to NTV at ONE. My name is Malcolm Sima. Let's go straight to the headlines this hour. Taking stock, NRM caucus members in NTV to discuss elections ahead of the primaries in 2015. Another accident in Gulu. This time, 5 passengers are injured, even as police introduce new guidelines. Also coming up, taking no chances. African countries have tightened travel caps in an effort to contain the Ebola outbreak. This is NTV at ONE. The NRM Parliamentary Caucus is meeting in Entebbe to discuss their roadmap to the elections in 2016. Following the confusion that arose during primaries in 2010, a committee was set up in March this year to investigate what happened. This committee is chaired by Rosemary Seninde. The other members are Dr. Chris Baryomunsi, Jim Mwezi, Felix Okot Ogong, Theopista Sentongo, Connie Galwango and Stephen Tashobia. They will table their report before the caucus. According to Baryomunsi, they will have recommended that the NRM should consider setting up tribunals within the party to look into disputes and complaints of dissatisfied candidates as one of the measures to curb the growing number of impediments in the party and members who support the opposition.
Well, this committee was put in place by the NRM caucus to examine what went wrong and what went right in the previous NRM primaries, because we all recall that the last elections in 2010 were very chaotic and left a lot of bitter experiences in the country. And therefore our main task was to look into what happened and then propose recommendations so that as we move towards 2015, where we're going to have primary elections, this time around the NRM should be able to organize better elections.
NRM caucus meeting of today, as per the agenda, will discuss 2 pertinent and fundamental issues. One, district reports on the sub-county consultations, on the Chamkwanzi resolution, on the question of the sole candidature of YK Museveni as the national chairperson of NRM and the only presidential candidate that will be fielded by the party. So we shall be getting reports from all districts of Uganda.
That's a story that forms a poll question this afternoon. Would tribunals within the ruling NRM resolve disputes arising from the party primaries? And the question is, would tribunals within the party resolve disputes arising from party primaries? And to have your say, you can text 6565 followed by your name and your location, and stay tuned for comments during this newscast. You can also get us on Facebook and Twitter. Look for at NTV Uganda, and also look for NTV Uganda on Facebook. Now, a dispute over pay has erupted among enumerators just days to the start of the 2014 Uganda population and housing census. Some enumerators are threatening to pull out of the exercise over poor pay and unfavorable working conditions.
The 2014 Uganda population and housing census starts next week on Thursday. However, things seem not to be moving on well with the Uganda Bureau of Statistics. Some of the people who have been trained to carry out the exercise are threatening not to go on with the job. Reason?
Every enumerator is going to be given 3,000 per day to do the actual groundwork, which is moving from house to house, recording information, which is a bit tiresome and hectic. So if you facilitate him for 3,000, probably for transport, feeding, that is not reasonable at all.
The money is not motivative to us to do the work wholeheartedly.
The enumerators are also questioning the wide margin in pay between themselves and their supervisors.
All assistant supervisors will be provided with 15,000 shillings every day. for their facilitation. And the supervisors are going to be provided with 20,000 shillings for their facilitation.
So I think it might even affect the information we are going to get. Some people may end up forging the information to finish up.
That means that the data that WUBOS needs from us might be compromised.
It may be low, but you are working within your area. So I don't think that is really so low. You are working within your area, within your home area. If you are crossing from one area to the other, that's a mistake. And this could be possibly the reason why some are saying it is low. You should work in your home area, and we think 3,000 is enough.
Over 80,000 people were recruited by the Uganda Bureau of Statistics to take part in the 2014 Uganda Population and Housing Census. The exercise has previously been postponed for 2 years because of lack of funds. The last census was conducted in 2002.
Now, following a meeting with President Yoweri Museveni yesterday evening, Makerere University Management has clarified on the 10% increment of tuition fees. It says the increment has not been halted, but the government has decided to pay it for only this academic year.
The 10% will be paid by the government for this year alone, by the way, not for next year. And then it did request us to make the unit cost, excluding the what? Excluding the salaries. Yeah. So as of now, the 10% has not affected our budget. So it's the same thing. We don't know as yet actually, but I'm sure it will be between 2.5 and 3 billion. So the students have not lost out also. It's the government now paying, okay? But after coming up with a new unit cost, things may change.
We have to find other innovations of raising money to run the university.
And next year we come up with a new unit cost, excluding the what? The salary. Okay? That means effective next year, the government will take over the what? The salary. Yeah. Of all the public universities. Yeah. Which is good actually for us actually.
5 people have been injured in an accident that occurred in Gulu town after a bus veered off the road and overturned. The accident at Customs Corner saw 2 children sustain injuries. The Aswa Region Police spokesperson says that the accident was caused by 2 drivers who were competing for passengers. Moses Akena was on the ground, and here is the report.
Incident that took place at around 10 a.m. yesterday at Customs Corner in Gulu town injured 3 children and 2 elderly people. Eyewitnesses told the police that the drivers were trying to outcompete each other to fill their half-empty buses headed to Kampala through Gulu town. The Aswa Region Police spokesperson Jimmy Okema says the driver of the ill-fated bus is still on the run.
So in the process of overtaking the bus, the space that was there for it to pass, it was too squeezed. So it had to slip and it overturned on the right side of the driver, of which about 5 people were reported injured, of which 3 were kids. We got their names as Laniero Agnes, Mwan Solomon, and 1 child who had a very deep cut on the head and the hands with the glasses. We didn't get the name, plus 2 elderly people, Rebecca Yo, who is 25 years old, and Chimba Patrick, 32 years old, is a medical personnel in Ajumani.
Meanwhile, the driver of a Fuso truck identified as William Okema was jailed for 61 years early this month after he was convicted of reckless driving that led to the death of 2 people. He was also trying to overtake another lorry under similar circumstances on the 29th of July while transporting traders to a market in Pade district.
Convicted and sentenced to 61 years in prison. About 25 counts were given to him over reckless driving, causing death through reckless driving, causing bodily injuries through reckless driving to over 20 people, and driving without a valid permit. And the vehicle he was using was carrying passengers without the lines.
This incident brings the number of fatal accidents along the country's major roads to 3 this week. On Monday, 7 people and 20 others were injured along the Gulu-Kampala highway when a Gaga bus and a KK bus collided in Nakasongola district. On Wednesday, a bus driver died and 6 passengers were injured along the Mbarara-Ntungamo highway. The driver jumped to his death from the bus which was losing control. Moses Sakena, NTV at ONE.
Thank you, Moses. The commander of the Combined U.S. Joint Task Force in the Horn of Africa has commended Uganda for its role in pacifying Somalia. Uganda's National Army, the UPDF, forms the bulk of the troops of the African Union peacekeeping mission in Somalia. Major General Wayne Grigsby was speaking at the Senior Command and Staff College in Chimaka, Jinja.
Senior U.S. Army Commander in the Horn of Africa, Major General Wayne Grigsby, commended the good work of the UPDF in pacifying Somalia under the Africa Union mission. The general who leads the U.S. anti-terrorism mission in Somalia and neighboring countries made the remarks at the UPDF Senior Command and Staff College in Chimaka, Jinja, while addressing 40 officers undergoing training.
I've seen some great teammates with, of course, the Ugandan People's Defense Forces, but then the Burundians, the Somali National Army, the Kenyans, all of us working together as one. And the mission of CJTF Horn of Africa is just to enable and to assist our teammates in here to solve African problems.
He lauded the UPDF for the teamwork with other AMISOM troops and expressed optimism that the effort will see the restoration of peace in Somalia after over 20 years of strife.
From where I sit as a member of enabling and assisting the troop contributing nations here in East Africa, I'm very satisfied with it, and I think we're moving in the right direction. It does take time.
The U.S. general also asked African countries to always help each other whenever insurgency breaks out in one country.
Every country I work with over the last 33 years always needs some assistance with enablers, like logistics, like civil affairs, like engineer.
Major General Grigsby planted a commemorative tree at the academy to mark his visit.
Thank you very much.
We're going to take a short break, but please do give your views and comments on our poll question this afternoon. And the question is, would tribunals within the ruling NRM primaries resolve disputes arising from party primaries? We're going to take a short break. NTV at 1 comes back.
Use White Star Laundry Bar Soap with a lemon fragrance and you'll have a fresh, clean day. Be like a star. Use White Star. White Star Laundry Bar Soap. All day fresh clean.
Stand up to be counted. Brought to you by UBOS. It's your right.
Just can you imagine that we have to be counted with everything, including our animals? Isn't that strange?
Census is a very important event. It's the official counting of population and housing. It's very important for everyone to participate and answer all questions truthfully.
They're suspicious about the things they're asking.
The information you give is very confidential. NLIT is used for planning, improving service delivery, and equitable resource allocation countrywide.
Oh.
Census is here. Get ready to be counted. Starting from 28th August to 6th September 2014. Together, we count. This message is brought to you by Uganda Bureau of Statistics.
My Home, brought to you by
Hima Cement. Build them a house that years can't touch. Build them a home that makes them feel safe and loved. When you build a home, build it with multi-purpose cement from Hima, because homes are built to last forever.
On the next episode, brought to you by...
At Orange, we know you want to do more on the internet. That's why we bring you happy hour day and night.
On the next episode of Tuwaye.
Ne batwambula ne batujjako buli kimu kyonna kye twalina. Nze kuddamu okutegeera nkeera
kumakya akawungeezi
kumakya ng'obudde bukya naye ng'eyatuleese bonna babumanyi ate era nga bwe tumwatula nti Jeno Kakolere nga buli omu olaba yeesika bwesisi n'ebenna be nali nnyina n'amaka gonna gaasaanawo kuba baali bamanyi nafa. Famire yange yonna nasanga yakyankala nadda.
Nasanga omukazi wange nga bodaboda yakamuta accident. So nemba nga omutwe tegukola bulungi mu kiseera ekyo.
You can download movies at the lowest prices and never fast from Orange. Dial *133# to buy a data bundle. Happy hour changes with Orange. Today changes with Orange.
Welcome back. This is NTV at ONE. Let's begin with a look at what you replied to us on the poll question. But first of all, would tribunals within the ruling NRM resolve disputes arising from party primaries? You can have your say on 6565. Send that text and followed by your name and your location. Here are some of your comments so far. And Jonan Katawaro is asking, we as NRM have to put all measures to see that those conflicts don't happen again. So tribunals will end the caucus. He says, let the caucus go on. He's referring to tribunals, saying they will solve the problems. I'll just take one. We'll be bringing you more comments at the tail end of this bulletin. As we move on, commercial forestry is becoming a lucrative venture in the country, with many farmers taking it as a preferred enterprise. But the key challenge these farmers face is lack of ready financing, with many commercial banks not willing to lend to farmers some facilitation, afraid of their ability to service the loans. In Nature Files this afternoon, Moses Akena explores funding, the marketing opportunities and returns on commercial forestry in Uganda.
Nature Files is brought to you by WWF with support from UNDP.
This farmer, Ponciano Besesa, speaks of deep frustration in his attempts to access loans from commercial banks to start up commercial forest project. Determined to succeed, he was forced to sell some of his assets to finance a commercial forest venture.
Government of Uganda and development partners decided the grant should consider helping tree farmers by creating a tree fund similar to that of agriculture, from which we can borrow long term with friendly interest rates.
Besesa managed to plant 940 hectares of pine trees in Kitenga sub-county, Mubende district, on land the National Forestry Authority leased him.
In this area of Mubende, the average per hectare per year is 35,000 Uganda shillings. But at the end of the day, it is a lot of money. This man has 1,000 hectares of forest.
He now expects to reap billions of shillings from the investment.
Besepo Uganda Limited is ready to continue investing in forestry as long as we get the necessary support, both financial and land.
But Besesa's model is just one of the options prospective forest farmers can explore to attempt growing trees for money. The National Forestry Authority has leased land in forest reserves to at least 4,000 farmers in the last 12 years. In addition to this, at least 40,000 hectares of timber plantations have been put up since 2004, with a subsidy from the Soil Log Production Grant Scheme funded by the European Union.
So if the tree fund can be established, I'm sure that you will see that this business of forestry will be sustainable in the near future.
Just last week, the European Union announced an additional grant of 16 million euros, approximately 56 billion shillings, to the scheme to support commercial forest production countrywide until 2020.
We will continue for another 4 years, a third phase of SOLOC, or SPGS as we call it. We hope with that we will see much greater benefits from this project.
In recent years, the demand for pines for electricity poles has been on the rise, likely due to rural electrification projects in Africa.
In terms of poles, we can produce on average of 8 years, when other countries can wait up to 12 years or between up to 15. The other advantage is, of course, the labor available in Uganda will comparatively be much higher.
There's increase in population, increase in investment in construction, the demand is rising. It is no longer the olden days where there's sufficient forests and the wood is rotting. Today it is business.
And you have seen charcoal. That charcoal is part of the consequences. The rate of replacing these trees being cut for charcoal is a huge challenge.
For instance, one pole can cost up to 180,000 shillings. One of the markets is here at New Forest Company in Mityana district, which supplies countries across Africa.
This year we will buy about 70,000. At the moment this year we'll sell 78,000 poles.
But the National Forestry Authority has now suspended leasing land to allow a review.
You give a license for tree farming, you find somebody is cultivating maize and cassava, and grazing and poultry, all sorts of things. In the next 6 months, I think we shall have new guidelines on how to operate private people in the Central Forest Reserves.
It is planting trees like this one that are expected to help check on the high rate of deforestation of natural forest cover in the country at 90,000 hectares a year. But apart from just giving you the money, it will help mitigate climate change and give you a long time to enjoy the money you make out of your investment. Moses Akena, NTV Nature Files.
Nature Files was brought to you by WWF with support from UNDP.
Thank you, Moses. African countries have tightened travel curbs in an effort to contain the Ebola outbreak, ignoring World Health Organization warnings that such measures would heighten shortages of food and basic supplies in affected areas. In the West Point slum in Liberia's capital, Monrovia, the scene of violent clashes with the army earlier this week after the area was quarantined to curb the spread of Ebola. Hundreds of people jostled their way towards trucks loaded with water and rice. Police used canes to beat back some locals, while aid workers helped others dip their fingers in ink to record their ration. The United Nations World Food Programme says deliveries of basic supplies to more than 1 million people across Guinea, Liberia and Sierra Leone are intended to avoid a food crisis in those West African countries where more than 1,300 people have died from Ebola in the worst outbreak of the disease in history.
Conclusions. And my decision
commend travel or trade restrictions for Liberia, the epidemic that began in March. It warned this week that those countries are starting to suffer shortages of fuel, food and basic supplies due to these measures. Meanwhile, Chad's Prime Minister said yesterday that his country would close its border with Nigeria to prevent Ebola entering the country. From entering its territory, barring its own citizens. In other news, U.S. military leaders have said the sophistication, wealth and military might of the Islamic State group represents a major threat to the United States that may surpass the ones posed by al-Qaeda. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel told reporters at the Pentagon that ISIS is an imminent threat to U.S. interests, whether it's in Iraq or anywhere else. Hagel's assessment of Islamic State, which gained strength during Syria's civil war and swept into northern Iraq earlier this summer, sounded a note of alarm several days after the group posted a video on social media showing one of its fighters beheading an American journalist who had been kidnapped in Syria. Let's have a look at sports now. Manchester United will go in search for their first Premier League win under manager Louis van Gaal when they travel to Sunderland, and Arsenal visit Everton in a host of Premier League games on cards this weekend. Let's have a look at what we have for you in the sports this afternoon.
If there was any doubt about the scale of the task facing the Dutchman, it was demonstrated by last weekend's 2-1 opening day defeat at home to Swansea. Sunderland, who started the season with a 2-2 draw at West Brom, will fancy their chances at the Stadium of Light, despite the fact that United signed Argentina World Cup defender Marcos Rojo from Sporting Lisbon in midweek. It's early in the campaign, but Arsenal's trip to Everton will be a good test to see how far Arsene Wenger's men have come since last season. Arsenal lost 3-0 at Goodison Park in April as Everton stepped up their challenge for a Champions League spot, and Roberto Martinez's men never let the visitors get into their stride. Liverpool's regrets about missing out on a first English League title for 24 years last season will be stronger than ever on Monday when they visit champions Manchester City, who pipped them by 2 points. The meeting of last term's top two is the highlight of the weekend Premier League programme. Liverpool will make the short motorway trip east to Manchester, knowing they should be arriving as title holders.
I mean, well, that means if Mario Balotelli does not sign in just a few hours to come, it means Liverpool will face Manchester City without the former City striker. And they could take in about 7 goals, by the way. That's it on NTV at 1. The details on sports are coming up with our team, Dennis and David Lumansi, plus Alan Darren. They'll be bringing you whatever is happening in the world of sport. Have a good afternoon.